She hadn't felt snow on her skin in 14 years. They dragged her from the cellar at dawn, shoved a black veil over her face, and bound her wrists so tight the rope cut to bone. The crowd in Stillwater Creek Square laughed when she stumbled. They called her the Specter, a curse in rags worth less than the horse tied beside her. But when a giant cowboy rode through that frozen morning, he didn't flinch. He looked straight at her and said 5 words that changed everything. How much for the girl? Stay with me until the end of this story and comment below what city you're watching from. I want to see how far Clara's journey travels across this world. The rope burned. Clara focused on that, the raw fire circling her wrists, because focusing on pain was easier than focusing on the faces. Silas shoved her forward. Her bare feet hit the auction platform and the cold shot up through her bones like a scream. "Step right up," his voice boomed across the square. "Come see what we've kept hidden all these years." The crowd pressed closer. 30, maybe 40 people. Clara couldn't see them clearly through the veil's crude eye holes, but she could hear them. God, she could hear everything. That's the Pruitt girl. Thought she died years ago. Look at her shaking, like a dog that's been beat too long. Silas grabbed her shoulder. His fingers found the bruise he'd left last night, found it and pressed. Clara bit down on her tongue until she tasted copper. 16 years we've carried this burden, he announced. 16 years of feeding it, clothing it, keeping it locked away where decent folk wouldn't have to suffer the sight. He paused for effect. But a man's got limits. Harriet stood at the platform's edge, her thin lips white. She wouldn't look at Clara. Hadn't looked directly at her in years. $20, Silas called out. $20 and you take this curse off our hands. She can cook, clean, mend. Just keep her covered, and she won't cause trouble. 20. A farmer near the front spat tobacco juice into the snow. For damaged goods. She ain't damaged, just different. Different how? Someone shouted. What's under that hood? Silas's grip tightened on Clara's shoulder. She felt his breath against her ear, hot and sour with last night's whiskey. Remember what you heard, he whispered. Remember what happens to girls who talk. Clara's stomach turned to ice. She remembered. 3 years ago, through the cellar door, Silas's voice slurred with drink. Had to do it, Harriet. Dawson was going to take everything. One swing of the shovel, and... Then Harriet's sharp reply. Never speak of it again. Never. Clara had never spoken of it, but Silas never forgot she'd heard. $15, he shouted to the crowd. Come on now, surely someone... A snowball hit Clara's chest, then another catching her shoulder. Laughter rippled through the square. $10. $10 for a working servant. I'll give you 5, called a heavy-set man with pig farmer's boots. She can slop the hogs. Something that ugly won't spook 'em none. The laughter turned mean, sharp. Clara's hands curled into fists inside her sleeves. 14 years. 14 years of darkness and silence and learning to make herself small. 14 years of swallowing rage until it sat in her gut like a stone. $5. Silas's voice cracked. Anyone else $5 going once? 30. The word cut through the noise like a blade. Clara's head snapped up. Through the veil's eye holes, she saw the crowd parting, not stepping aside, falling back, like water around a boulder. The man sat on a black horse at the square's edge. Tall. No more than tall. Massive. Shoulders wide enough to block a doorway, hands that could crush bone. His face was hard angles and old scars half hidden under a snow-dusted hat. But his eyes were fixed on her, not on the veil, not on the spectacle, on her. $30, he repeated. His voice was low quiet, the kind of quiet that made people lean in to hear. That's my offer. Silas recovered fast. Well now, stranger, that's mighty generous, but I think we can do better. This here's prime merchandise. Wasn't negotiating. The man dismounted. The crowd scattered wider. 30. Take it or I start asking questions about why you kept a girl locked in a cellar for 16 years. The color drained from Silas's face. How did you? Small town. People talk. The stranger climbed the platform steps. Each footfall sounded like a hammer strike. I'm Eli Brennan. You've heard of me? Clara watched Silas's expression shift. Fear calculation, then something that looked almost like relief. Brennan, the rancher. Silas forced a smile. Heard you lost your wife. Heard you've got children needing care. That why you want this one. Why I want her is my business. Fair enough, fair enough. Silas rubbed his hands together. $30 it is, but I'll need 40 to cover. You'll take 30. Eli stopped 3 feet from Clara. Up close he was even bigger. A wall of a man. And you'll write up a bill of sale. Legal and proper. Now wait just a... Wasn't asking. Silence. The wind cut through the square carrying snow and the distant sound of a dog barking. Silas's smile curdled. Fine. Harriet get paper from the store. While Harriet scurried off, Eli turned to Clara. His eyes searched the black veil like he was trying to see through it. Ma'am. His voice dropped gentled. You want to leave with me? Clara couldn't speak. The question didn't make sense. Nobody asked what she wanted. Take your time, nod or shake your head. You want to go back to the cellar? She shook her head, hard. You want to be sold to the pig farmer? Another shake. You want to come with me? I've got a ranch, 3 children, plenty of work. Nobody's going to lock you up or put a hood on you unless you want it there. Clara's hands were shaking. Her whole body was shaking. This was a trick. Had to be. Men didn't offer choices. Men didn't ask. But his eyes didn't waver. Didn't slide away like Silas's did when he lied. Slowly she nodded. All right then. Eli reached for the ropes on her wrists. These are coming off. You can't. Silas started. Eli's head turned. Just turned. That was all. But Silas stepped back like he'd been shoved. The ropes fell away. Clara gasped. She couldn't help it at the sudden absence of pain. Her wrists were raw, bleeding in places, the skin torn. That needs cleaning, Eli said quietly. Got medicine at the ranch. Harriet returned with paper, and Silas scrawled out a bill of sale, his hand shaking with barely contained fury. 3 townsmen signed as witnesses, all of them avoiding Silas's eyes. When it was done, Eli folded the paper into his coat. We're leaving. Brennan. Silas's voice stopped him. The showman's mask had slipped, revealing something cold underneath, something dangerous. You think you know what you bought. You don't. Some things should stay buried. Some secrets are worth killing for. Clara's blood turned to ice. Eli looked at Silas for a long moment. That a threat? Call it friendly advice. I don't take advice from men who chain up women. Eli turned to Clara. Can you walk? She nodded, though her legs felt like water. Then let's go. He didn't grab her arm, didn't steer her like cattle. Just walked toward his horse and waited. Clara followed, 1 foot in front of the other. Bare feet on frozen ground, body shaking, heart slamming against her ribs. Behind her, she felt Silas's stare like a knife at her back. Murderer, she thought. I know what you did, and now you know I know. She'd traded one prison for another. Had to have. Men didn't save women out of kindness. There was always a price. But when Eli lifted her onto the horse, gentle, careful, like she was something fragile instead of something cursed, she couldn't make herself believe it. Hold the horn, he said. I'll walk. Walk. In this cold. Horse needs rest. So do you. He gathered the reins and started forward. We've got 3 hours. Try to stay warm. The crowd parted around them. Clara kept her head down, but she heard the whispers. Brennan's lost his mind. That thing'll curse his whole family. Give it a month. He'll be begging the Pruitts to take her back. They cleared the town's edge before Clara found her voice. Why? Eli didn't turn around. Why what? Why did you pay $30 for something everyone says is cursed? You believe you're cursed. Doesn't matter what I believe, matters what they believe. Does it? Clara fell silent. The question sat in her chest like a splinter. They walked for nearly an hour before Eli spoke again. Saw boys in the war, young ones, left behind after battles because they were too broken to be useful anymore. His voice was flat matter-of-fact. Watched good men walk past them. Told myself it wasn't my problem. Was it? Everything's everyone's problem. That's what my wife used to say. We just pretend it isn't so we can sleep at night. Your wife sounds smart. She was. Smarter than me anyway. He adjusted his grip on the reins. She died thinking I'd turned into a cold man. Hard man. The kind who walks past suffering and tells himself it's not his concern. Had you? Maybe. Probably. A pause. Saw you on that platform this morning, saw how they looked at you, talked about you. Something in me just broke. Clara's throat tightened. So I'm penance. No. For the first time he turned to look at her. His eyes were dark, tired, but there was something steady in them. Something solid. You're a person who deserved better than what that town gave you. What happens next, whether you stay a day or a year or forever, that's your choice. But I couldn't walk past. Not this time. Clara didn't know what to say. Didn't know what to feel. 14 years in a cellar hadn't prepared her for this, for kindness, without strings, for choices offered, without punishment waiting behind them. The veil, she said finally. You haven't asked about what's underneath. Don't need to. Everyone wants to know. I'm not everyone. He turned back to the road. When you're ready to take it off, you will. When you're not, you won't. Either way, you're still the same person. You don't know that. You don't know what I look like. I know what you sound like. Know you've got a voice that's been quiet too long and a mind that's been thinking too hard. Know you're scared, but you haven't begged or pleaded or fallen apart. He shrugged. Face is just a face. Doesn't tell me anything I need to know. Clara felt something crack in her chest. Something she'd bricked up so long ago she'd forgotten it existed. She didn't cry. Crying was a luxury she'd beaten out of herself years ago. But she gripped the saddle horn tighter and let the cold air fill her lungs and thought for the first time in 14 years that maybe she wasn't going to die in that cellar after all. The ranch appeared as the sun dropped toward the mountains. 2 stories, dark timber smoke curling from the chimney. Bigger than Clara expected. Warmer looking. Then the door burst open and 3 children spilled out. Pa! A girl's voice high and sharp. Pa, you're back early? You're back! The girl stopped halfway across the yard. Dark braids, gray eyes, maybe 12 years old. Behind her, 2 boys, twins by the look of them, nearly crashed into her back. Pa! The girl's voice went uncertain. Who's that? This is Clara. Eli tied the horse to the porch rail. She's staying with us. Staying. One of the twins edged forward. Like a guest. Like family. The word hit Clara like a fist. Family. She'd never been anyone's family. Never been anyone's anything except burden and curse and problem to be hidden. Why she got that thing on her face? The other twin asked. Tommy? The girl's voice cracked like a whip. Mind your manners. What I'm just asking. Because she wants to wear it, Eli said. That's all you need to know. The quieter twin will. Clara remembered, tilted his head, studying her with eyes too old for his face. Can she talk? Yes. Clara's voice came out rusty. I can talk. Then welcome to Brennan Ranch. Will stepped forward and stuck out his hand with solemn formality. I'm William. That's Thomas. He asks stupid questions. They're not stupid. They're a little stupid. Boys. Eli's voice cut through. Clara's cold and tired. Josie, find her something warm to wear. Your mother's things should fit. Something flickered across Josie's face. Pain, maybe. Resentment. But she nodded. Yes, Pa. Tommy will get the spare room ready. Extra blankets. The boys scrambled toward the house, already arguing about who would carry what. Clara watched them go, her chest tight with something she couldn't name. They're good kids, Eli said quietly. Wild, but good. They don't seem afraid of me. Why would they be? Clara didn't have an answer for that. Inside the house smelled like wood smoke and bread. Warm. Alive. Clara stopped just past the threshold, overwhelmed by simple things. Light through windows, rugs on floors, the distant sound of children's voices. Sit. Eli pointed to a chair by the fire. I'll heat up supper. I can do it. I should work. You should rest. His voice was firm but not unkind. There's time for work tomorrow. Tonight you eat. Clara sat. The fire's heat hit her like a wall, and she realized how cold she'd been. How cold she'd been for 14 years. She was shaking again. Not from cold this time. Eli moved around the kitchen, ladling stew, slicing bread, pouring something hot into a cup. He set it all on a small table beside her without comment. Eat slow. Your stomach's not used to much. Clara lifted the veil just enough to eat, angling away so her scarred side stayed hidden. The first bite of stew made her eyes water. Real meat, real vegetables, real food, not the scraps Harriet shoved under the cellar door. Good, Eli asked. She nodded, not trusting her voice. They sat in silence while she ate. Upstairs, she could hear the children, Josie giving orders, the boys complaining, feet pounding back and forth. Normal sounds, family sounds, foreign as another language. Mr. Brennan. Eli. Eli. She set down her spoon. Those things Silas said, at the end, about secrets worth killing for. Eli's expression didn't change. What about them? He meant them. I figured. You don't want to know what he's talking about. Do you want to tell me? Clara's hands tightened in her lap. 3 years ago, I heard something through the cellar door. Something about a man named Dawson. Something Silas did. Eli was quiet for a long moment. That why they kept you locked up? I think so. I think... She stopped, drew a breath. I think Silas killed him, and I think he'd kill me too if he thought I'd talk. She waited for fear in Eli's eyes. Calculation. The look men got when they realized they'd bought more trouble than they bargained for. Instead, he just nodded. Then it's good you're here and not there. That's all you have to say. What do you want me to say? I don't know. That you're taking me back. That you don't want a witness to murder living under your roof. That, Clara, his voice was quiet but solid. Man like Silas, he's been getting away with things his whole life because people are too scared to stand up. I'm not scared of him, and I'm not taking you back. You don't even know me. I know enough. He stood and stoked the fire. I know you survived 14 years in a cellar, and you're still sane enough to worry about other people's problems. I know you're scared, but you haven't run. I know you've got a secret that could get you killed, and you told me anyway, even though you had no reason to trust me. He turned to face her firelight, catching the hard planes of his face. That tells me more about who you are than anything under that veil ever could. Before Clara could respond, boots thundered on the stairs. Tommy burst into the kitchen, snow melting in his hair. Pa, the chickens got out again. Will tried to catch 'em, but they're everywhere, and General Cluckington bit him and... Slow down. Eli held up a hand. How many got out? All of 'em. Well, most of 'em. The mean ones for sure. Eli sighed. All right, get your coat. We'll round them up before dark. Can Clara help? Tommy looked at her with naked curiosity. She's not doing anything. Clara's tired. I'll help. The words came out before Clara could stop them. Both Eli and Tommy turned to look at her. I mean, if that's all right. I used to before the cellar. I used to help with chickens. Tommy's face lit up. You know about chickens. A little. Then come on. He grabbed her hand, grabbed it without flinching, without hesitation, and pulled her toward the door. General Cluckington's the worst. She's got murder in her eyes, I swear. Clara looked back at Eli. He nodded once, something that might have been approval in his expression. Outside, the cold hit her face through the veil. The snow crunched under borrowed boots. Will was chasing a fat red hen across the yard, his curses creative and surprisingly varied for a 9-year-old. That's Sergeant Feathers, Tommy yelled. Cut her off by the fence. Clara moved without thinking. Her body remembered this, the quick sidestep, the low crouch, the way chickens always zigged when you expected them to zag. She cornered Sergeant Feathers against the barn wall and scooped her up in one smooth motion. You got her. Tommy was staring at her like she'd performed magic. Pa, did you see that? She just whoosh, and then... I saw. Eli was leaning against the porch rail watching. Nice work. Will jogged over, panting. How'd you do that? I've been chasing that stupid bird for 10 minutes. Chickens are predictable, Clara said. They always run toward the gap they think you don't see. Can you catch General Cluckington? Tommy's eyes were huge. Nobody can catch her. She's evil. Clara looked across the yard. A massive black hen stood on top of the water trough, glaring at them with undisguised malevolence. I can try. She handed Sergeant Feathers to Will and approached the trough slowly. General Cluckington ruffled her feathers and let out a warning cluck. Easy, Clara murmured. Easy, girl. The chicken's beady eyes tracked her movement. Clara didn't rush, didn't lunge, just eased closer step by step until she was within arm's reach. Then she moved. General Cluckington squawked and launched herself sideways, but Clara was faster. Her hands closed around the bird's body, pinning the wings before those vicious claws could connect. Tommy whooped. She did it! She actually did it! Will was gaping. General Cluckington has never been caught. Never. Pa's tried. I've tried. Josie won't even go near her. Clara looked down at the furious chicken in her hands. It struggled, clucked angrily, then seemed to accept its fate with ill grace. First time I've caught anything in 14 years, she said quietly. First time I've chosen to do anything at all. The boys didn't understand. Couldn't understand. But Eli did. She saw it in his face, the recognition, the quiet respect. Well, he said, pushing off from the porch rail. Looks like you've got a talent we could use. Boys, show Clara where the coop is. Then get inside before your sister comes out here and lectures all of us. Tommy grabbed Clara's free hand again, tugging her toward the barn. Will followed, peppering her with questions about chicken-catching techniques. Clara answered automatically, her mind somewhere else entirely. She was thinking about cages, about darkness, about 14 years of being told she was cursed, worthless, something to be hidden away. And she was thinking about how it felt to stand in the snow with a captured chicken in her arms, and 2 boys who looked at her like she was something wonderful instead of something to fear. In the upstairs window, Josie watched. Her expression was unreadable. Clara met her eyes through the veil. The girl didn't look away, didn't smile, but she nodded a tiny motion, barely visible. Acknowledgement. Not acceptance. Not yet. But acknowledgement. It was more than Clara had ever had before. Later, after the chickens were secured and the children fed and the house settled into evening quiet, Clara stood at the window of her room. Her room with a real bed and real blankets and a door that didn't lock from the outside. Snow was falling again, soft and silent, covering the yard in white. 14 years in darkness. 14 years of believing she deserved it. And now this. A ranch. Children. A man who looked at her like she was human. It couldn't be real. Couldn't last. Silas was out there somewhere nursing his fury, remembering what she knew. remembering what she could say. But tonight, just tonight, Clara let herself feel something other than fear. She touched the veil covering her face, thought about the ruin underneath, the scar that ran from temple to jaw, twisting her eye, pulling her mouth into a permanent half-grimace. "Face is just a face," Eli had said. "Doesn't tell me anything I need to know." Nobody had ever said that to her before. Clara let her hand drop. She didn't take off the veil. Wasn't ready for that. Might never be ready. But for the first time in 14 years, she thought maybe, just maybe, she wanted to try. Outside, the snow kept falling, and somewhere in the darkness beyond the window, a new life waited to begin. The first week passed like a fever dream. Clara woke before dawn each morning, her body still trained to the cellar's rhythms, the scrape of the bolt, the thud of the food tray, the brief slice of light before darkness swallowed everything again. But instead of stone walls and damp air, she opened her eyes to wooden beams and the smell of pine, to a window showing mountains going pink with sunrise. To silence that wasn't punishment. It took her 3 days to stop flinching when footsteps passed her door. "You don't have to hide in there," Eli said on the 4th morning. He stood in the hallway, coffee cup in hand, not coming closer. Never coming closer, unless she moved first. "Kitchen's warm. Breakfast's ready." Clara emerged slowly, the black veil still covering her face. She'd slept in it. Would probably die in it if she had her way. "Thank you." "No need to thank me for breakfast. That's just life." He turned and headed downstairs, his heavy footfalls somehow reassuring instead of threatening. "Come on. Boys are already fighting over the bacon." She followed. She always followed now, not because she had to, but because she didn't know what else to do. 14 years had hollowed out the part of her that made decisions. In the kitchen, chaos reigned. Tommy had stolen a strip of bacon off Will's plate and was dangling it above his head while Will lunged for it. Josie sat at the table's far end, ignoring them both, her nose buried in a book that looked too old for a 12-year-old. "Sit," Eli said, pointing to the empty chair beside Josie. "Boys, if I have to separate you, neither of you gets bacon." He started it. Did not. "Don't care who started it. I'm finishing it." Clara lowered herself into the chair. Josie didn't look up from her book, but her shoulders tensed, a tiny motion barely visible. "What are you reading?" Clara asked quietly. "Jane Eyre." Josie turned a page with deliberate slowness. "Ma's copy." The words landed like stones. Ma's copy. A reminder of who Clara wasn't, who she could never replace. "I've never read it." "You can read." The question came out sharper than Josie probably intended. The girl's cheeks flushed. "I mean, I didn't know if... I can read. My father taught me before he died." Clara paused. "Before everything." Josie finally looked at her. Gray eyes, Eli's eyes searching the black veil like she could see through it. "What happened to your father?" "Mining accident. I was 6. I was 9 when Ma died." Josie's voice dropped. "Fever. 3 weeks start to finish." They sat in silence while the boys' argument faded to background noise. Two girls who'd lost too much circling each other like wary animals. "She was nice," Josie said finally. "Ma, she would have liked you probably. She liked everybody. Even people in veils. She didn't care about stuff like that. Said what mattered was what people did, not what they looked like." Josie's jaw tightened. "Pa's different now, since she died. Harder, quieter. Like part of him went into the ground with her." Clara thought about Eli's eyes, that steady darkness, that weight. "He seems kind to me." "He is kind, just not warm. Not anymore." Josie closed her book. "But yesterday when you caught General Cluckington, he laughed. Actually laughed. Haven't heard that sound in 3 years." Before Clara could respond, Eli set a plate in front of her. Eggs, bacon, bread with butter. More food than she'd eaten in a week in the cellar. "Eat," he said. "Got a lot to do today." "What kind of things?" "Ranch things. Fence needs mending in the north pasture. Cattle need checking. Tommy's got reading lessons he's been avoiding." He shot a look at his son, who suddenly became very interested in his breakfast. "Thought you might help Josie with the house if you're willing." Clara nodded. "I'm willing." "Good." He grabbed his coat from the hook. "Boys, you're with me. Josie, show Clara where everything is, and be nice." "I'm always nice," Josie muttered. Eli's mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but close. "Sure you are." The door closed behind him, and suddenly, Clara was alone with a 12-year-old girl who couldn't decide whether to hate her or not. "So," Josie said, standing. "You know how to clean?" "Yes." "Cook?" "Yes." "Mend clothes?" "Yes." Josie's eyes narrowed. "What can't you do?" Clara thought about it. "Trust people. Sleep through the night. Look at my own reflection." She paused. "Take off this veil." Something shifted in Josie's expression. Not softening exactly, but recognition. Ma always said everybody's got broken parts. Said the trick is finding people whose broken parts fit with yours. Your mother said a lot of things. She talked a lot. Pa used to tease her about it. Josie grabbed a broom from the corner. "You can start with the floors. I'll show you where the cleaning things are." They worked in silence for an hour, Clara sweeping Josie, dusting, neither of them speaking, but somehow communicating anyway. The house was bigger than it looked from outside, full of small rooms and unexpected corners. Clara found traces of Ruth Brennan everywhere, a sampler on the wall embroidered with tiny flowers, a china cup on a shelf too delicate for daily use, a photograph in a silver frame showing a woman with kind eyes and Josie's stubborn chin. "You can look at it," Josie said from behind her. "I don't mind." Clara hadn't realized she'd stopped sweeping. She was beautiful. She was. Pa used to say she was too beautiful for a rough man like him. She'd laugh and say he wasn't rough, just unpolished. Josie came to stand beside her, both of them looking at the photograph. "Do you think people can love twice? I mean really love, not just settling?" The question caught Clara off guard. "I don't know. I've never loved anyone at all. Not even your father. I was 6 when he died. I barely remember him." Clara touched the edge of the frame. "I remember his voice, his hands, the way he smelled like coal dust. But his face." She shook her head. "It's gone. All I have are fragments." "That's sad." "It's just the truth." Josie was quiet for a moment. Then, "What's under the veil? Really?" Clara's hand dropped from the frame. "Scars. From when I was 8. My stepfather hit me with a horse strap, split my face open from temple to jaw." "He hit you?" Josie's voice went sharp with outrage. "Your own stepfather. He wasn't much for family feeling. And that's why they kept you locked up, because of scars." Clara hesitated. The truth sat heavy on her tongue. Silas's secret, the murder she'd overheard, the real reason she'd spent 14 years in darkness. But Josie was 12 years old, and already carrying too much weight. "Partly," Clara said finally. "There are other reasons, complicated ones. Pa knows." "Yes." Josie studied her for a long moment. Then she nodded, apparently satisfied. "Okay, I won't ask again. But Clara, yes. If you hurt my family, if you bring trouble to this house, I'll make you regret it. I don't care how sad your story is." Josie's gray eyes were hard as iron. "My brothers have already lost their mother. They're not losing anything else. Understand?" Clara should have been offended, should have felt threatened or angry. Instead, she felt something like respect. "I understand." "Good." Josie picked up her dusting cloth. Now come on. The bedrooms won't clean themselves. The days settled into rhythm. Clara cleaned, cooked, mended, all the things she'd done in the cellar, but different now. Now there were windows to let in light. Now there were voices around her children's laughter, the steady presence of a man who asked nothing from her except that she exist. She started baking bread on the 5th day. The kitchen had everything she needed: flour, yeast, salt, the big wooden bowl Ruth must have used for the same purpose. Clara's hands remembered the motions: knead, fold, turn. Knead, fold, turn. The dough grew warm under her palms, alive with possibility. Smells good. She spun around. Eli stood in the doorway, snow melting in his dark hair, his expression unreadable. I hope it's all right. I found the supplies and thought, it's more than all right. He came closer, stopping a few feet away. Always stopping a few feet away, giving her space. Ruth used to bake. After she died, we lived on hardtack and hope, having fresh bread again. He shook his head. The boys will be over the moon. It's just bread. Nothing's ever just anything. He leaned against the counter, watching her work. You're good at that. The kneading. Got a rhythm to it. My grandmother taught me, before she died. Clara punched the dough down, shaped it into loaves. Before the cellar. Before everything. Lot of befores in your life. Lot of afters now, too. She glanced at him. Thanks to you. Eli shrugged. Told you before. Don't need thanks for basic decency. Basic decency is rarer than you think. Suppose it is. He was quiet for a moment, watching her hands move. Can I ask you something? Clara's shoulders tensed. Depends on what? The scars, under the veil, do they still hurt? It wasn't the question she'd expected. No, not physically. It's been 14 years, the tissue healed a long time ago. But sometimes I feel them anyway, like phantom pain, like my face remembers what happened even when my mind tries to forget. She covered the loaves with a cloth and set them near the stove to rise. Does that make sense? More than you know. Eli touched his right eyebrow, the one with the scar bisecting it. Took a bayonet at Chickamauga, 22 years ago, and I still feel it sometimes. Still wake up thinking I'm back there bleeding in the mud. You were in the war. Union Army. Signed up at 18, thought I was going to be a hero. His laugh was bitter. Found out fast that war doesn't make heroes, just survivors and corpses. Which one are you? Some days I'm not sure. He straightened up. Anyway, wanted to tell you I'm riding into town tomorrow. Need supplies. If you want to come, you're welcome. Clara's blood went cold. Town. Where Silas is. Where Silas is, Eli confirmed. But also where Mrs. Chen's store is, where the church is, where people who aren't Silas live their lives every day. He held her gaze. You can't hide here forever, Clara. Eventually, you'll have to face that town again. I know. But not tomorrow if you're not ready. I won't force you. She wanted to say no. Wanted to stay in this warm kitchen forever, safe from staring eyes and whispered curses. But something in Eli's expression, patient, steady waiting, made her pause. Can I think about it? Take all the time you need. He left, and Clara stood alone with her rising bread, her racing heart, and a decision that felt bigger than it should. That night, she dreamed of the cellar. Darkness pressed down on her like a living thing. She couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't scream. Silas's voice echoed off the stone walls. Remember what you heard. Remember what I'll do. Then hands, reaching through the dark. Not grabbing, just reaching. Offering. You're safe, a voice said. Eli's voice. I've got you. You're safe. Clara woke gasping, tangled in sweat-soaked sheets. The window showed stars. Real stars, not the darkness she'd dreamed, and slowly her heart stopped racing. A knock at the door, soft, uncertain. "Clara," Josie's voice. "Are you okay? I heard you." "I'm fine." Clara's voice came out hoarse. "Just a nightmare." The door cracked open. Josie's face appeared pale in the moonlight. "Do you want company?" "Sometimes after Ma died, I used to get nightmares too. Pa would sit with me until they passed." Clara should have said no. Should have protected the walls she'd built. Instead, she said, "Yes, please." Josie slipped into the room and sat on the edge of the bed, keeping her distance but somehow present. Real. "What do you dream about?" she asked quietly. "The cellar. Silas. Things I can't change. Pa dreams about the war. I hear him sometimes through the walls. He doesn't know I know. Everyone's got nightmares. Ma didn't. She used to say she dreamed about gardens and sunshine, and Pa when he was young and didn't have gray in his hair." Josie's voice caught. "I miss her dreams. The way she'd tell us about them at breakfast like they were stories just for us." Clara didn't know what to say. Didn't know how to comfort a grieving child when she'd never been comforted herself. So she just sat there silent, while Josie cried quietly into her hands. And when the tears stopped, and Josie wiped her face and stood up to leave, Clara found her voice. "Thank you." "For what?" "For sitting with me. For letting me see you cry." Clara paused. "For treating me like a person instead of a ghost." Josie looked at her for a long moment. Then slowly she reached out and touched Clara's hand the first time she'd touched her voluntarily. "You're not a ghost," Josie said. "Ghosts don't make bread that smells like heaven." She left before Clara could respond. But somehow in the darkness that remained, the cellar felt farther away than it had before. Morning came bright and cold. Clara made her decision over breakfast, watching the boys shovel eggs into their mouths, while Eli drank coffee and reviewed his supply list. "I'll come," she said. "To town." Everyone stopped. Tommy's fork froze halfway to his mouth. Will's eyes went wide. Josie looked up from her book surprised. Eli just nodded. "All right, we leave in an hour." "Is that smart?" Josie's voice was sharp. "The whole town saw her get bought like livestock. They'll stare, they'll talk." "Let them." Eli set down his coffee. "Clara's got as much right to walk those streets as anyone. More, maybe." "But Silas?" "Silas is a coward. Cowards don't start fights they can't win." Eli looked at Clara. "You sure about this?" No, she wasn't sure about anything, but she nodded anyway. The ride to town took 2 hours. Clara sat beside Eli on the wagon seat, her veil pulled tight, her hands clenched in her lap. The boys stayed home with Josie. "Too cold for them," Eli had said, but Clara suspected he wanted to spare her an audience for whatever happened next. Stillwater Creek looked different in daylight. Smaller, less menacing. Just a collection of wooden buildings clinging to the frozen earth, smoke rising from chimneys, people moving through the streets with their heads down against the wind. But heads lifted when Eli's wagon rolled in. Heads lifted and eyes found Clara, and the whispers started immediately. "That's her. The Specter." Brennan still got her figured, he'd have sent her back by now. "Look at her sitting there bold as brass, like she's not cursed." Clara kept her eyes forward, one foot in front of the other, one breath after another. She'd survived 14 years in a cellar. She could survive an hour in a town square. Eli pulled the wagon up outside Mrs. Chen's general store and set the brake. "Ready?" "No." "Good. Means you're honest." He climbed down and offered his hand to help her descend. "Stay close. Don't let them see you flinch." They walked into the store together. A bell chimed above the door, and Mrs. Chen looked up from behind the counter, a small woman with silver hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Mr. Brennan." Her gaze moved to Clara, assessing. And guessed. Mrs. Chen. Need supplies. Flour, sugar, coffee. Salt if you've got it. I've got everything. Mrs. Chen came around the counter, moving past Clara without hesitation, without recoiling. Is she the one from the auction? The Pruitt girl? Her name's Clara. Clara. Mrs. Chen stopped in front of her. You cook. Clara blinked. Yes, ma'am. Good. I've tasted Brennan's cooking. Those children need someone who knows their way around a kitchen. A pause. That veil must be hot. You want water? The kindness caught Clara off guard. Yes, thank you. Mrs. Chen brought her a cup, cool and clean. Clara lifted her veil just enough to drink, and when she lowered it, Mrs. Chen nodded approvingly. Good bones. I can tell even with the covering. Whatever's underneath you, hold your head high. She turned back to Eli. Flowers in the back. I'll get your order ready. While Eli went to help load the wagon, Clara stood in the store surrounded by ordinary things, bolts of fabric, jars of candy tools hanging on walls. Normal life. The life she'd been denied for 14 years. The bell chimed again. Clara turned. Silas Pruitt stood in the doorway. He looked worse than she remembered, thinner, grayer, the broken blood vessels on his nose spreading like a map of his failures. But his eyes, those cold, calculating eyes, were exactly the same. Well, well. His voice dripped false friendliness. The prodigal daughter. Out in public now, are we? Clara's throat closed. Her hands started to shake. Nothing to say. Silas stepped closer. Cat got your tongue? Or are you saving your words for someone else, telling tales you shouldn't be telling? I haven't told anyone anything. No. He moved closer, still lowering his voice, so only she could hear. Brennan took you in awful fast, paid an awful lot. Makes a man wonder what he's getting for his money. Makes a man wonder what services you're providing. Clara's face burned beneath the veil. It's not like that. Isn't it? Silas's smile was a knife. Pretty convenient, don't you think, poor locked-up girl rescued by a lonely widower? What's he doing with you at night? Clara, what are you letting him do? Nothing. He's decent. He's a man, and men only want one thing from things like you. Silas leaned in, his breath sour with drink even this early in the day. Enjoy it while it lasts. When he finds out what you really are, what you know, he'll throw you out like the garbage you are. And then you'll come crawling back to us. Crawling back to the cellar where you belong. She won't be crawling anywhere. Eli's voice cut through the store like a whip crack. He stood at the back entrance, a sack of flour over each shoulder, his eyes fixed on Silas with an expression that made Clara's blood chill. Silas straightened up, his smile turning oily. Mr. Brennan, just having a friendly chat with my stepdaughter. Didn't look friendly. Eli set the flour down with a thud that shook the floorboards. Looked like harassment. Harassment, you were simply leaving. Eli took a step forward, then another. Silas backed up until he hit a shelf, rattling the jars behind him. And you're going to keep leaving. Every time you see Clara, you're going to turn around and walk the other way. Understand? You can't tell me what to do. This is a public. Eli moved. Faster than a man his size should be able to move. His hand closed around Silas's collar and lifted, pulling the smaller man onto his toes. Let me be clear. Eli's voice was quiet, calm, terrifying. I know what you did. I know about Dawson. I know why you kept Clara locked up all those years. And if you come near her again, if you so much as look at her wrong, I'll make sure everyone else knows too. Silas's face went white. You can't prove. Don't need to prove anything. Just need to talk. This town's already got opinions about you, Silas. Imagine what they'll think when they hear about a man disappeared, a girl locked away, a shovel, and a shallow grave. You're bluffing. Try me. Eli released him with a shove that sent Silas stumbling. Now get out, and pray I don't change my mind about keeping quiet. Silas fled. The bell chimed as the door slammed, and then it was just Clara and Eli in the store. Mrs. Chen watching silently from behind her counter. "You heard," Clara said. "What he said about me. About what he thinks I'm that we're—" "I heard a desperate man trying to hurt someone who can't fight back." Eli picked up the flour sacks like they weighed nothing. "Don't give his words power they don't deserve. But people think all kinds of things, half of them wrong, most of them none of their business." He met her eyes. "You know the truth. I know the truth. That's all that matters." Clara felt tears prick behind her eyes. She blinked them back, grateful for the veil that hid her face. "Thank you." "Stop thanking me." But his voice was gentle. "Come on, we've got more shopping to do." They finished their errands in silence, loading the wagon with supplies, while townspeople watched and whispered. Clara kept her head high the way Mrs. Chen had told her, kept her hands steady even when they wanted to shake. By the time they started home, the sun was beginning its descent toward the mountains. Clara sat beside Eli on the wagon seat, exhausted in ways that had nothing to do with physical labor. "You did good today," Eli said after a while. "I fell apart. Silas cornered me and I just froze, like I was back in the cellar." "But you didn't run, didn't hide. You stood there and faced him even when you were scared." He glanced at her. "That's not falling apart. That's being brave." "It didn't feel brave. Brave never does. Brave feels like terror with a thin coat of stubbornness." A pause. "My wife told me that, before the war. She was right about most things." They rode in silence for a while, the wagon creaking, the horse's breath steaming in the cold air. "Eli." "Yeah." "What you said to Silas, about telling people, about the murder." Clara swallowed. "Would you really do it?" "If I had to, yes. Even without proof. Sometimes proof matters less than people think. Sometimes the story is enough." He was quiet for a moment. "But I'd rather not. Rather let sleeping dogs lie long as they stay asleep. Silas is a coward. He'll slink away and lick his wounds and convince himself this was someone else's fault. Men like him always do. And if he doesn't?" Eli looked at her, his dark eyes steady. "Then I'll protect you, whatever it takes." Something cracked in Clara's chest. Something that had been frozen for 14 years slowly beginning to thaw. "Why?" she whispered. "Why do you care so much about what happens to me?" Eli was silent for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. "Because you remind me of who I used to be, before the war took everything soft in me and turned it to stone." He shook his head. "You've been through hell, Clara. Real hell. And you're still standing, still trying, still hoping even when hope doesn't make sense." His jaw tightened. "I spent 3 years after Ruth died telling myself I didn't care anymore, telling myself the world was cruel and cold and there was no point in fighting it. But then I saw you on that platform and something in me just woke up. Woke up. Like I'd been sleepwalking, going through the motions, pretending to be alive when I was really just waiting to die." He looked at her, and there was something raw in his expression, something vulnerable. "You made me want to try again, to care again, to believe that maybe there's still some good left in this world worth protecting." Clara couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything except sit there while Eli Brennan, this mountain of a man who'd saved her from everything, told her she'd saved him right back. "I don't deserve that," she managed finally. "I'm nobody. I'm just, you're Clara." His voice was firm. "And you're not nobody. Not to me. Not to my children. Not anymore." The wagon rolled on through the gathering dusk. Clara watched the mountains go purple in the fading light and felt something bloom in her chest. Something warm, something dangerous, something that felt impossibly like belonging. When they reached the ranch, the children came running out to meet them. Tommy grabbed Clara's hand to drag her inside and see the drawing he'd made. Will followed with questions about town. Even Josie looked up from her book and almost smiled. "How was it?" she asked quietly while the boys unloaded supplies. "Hard, but good, I think." Clara paused. "I stood up to Silas, or Eli did, both maybe." "Pa's good at standing up to people." Josie closed her book. "Ma used to say he had a hero's heart under all that gruffness. Said he just needed reminding sometimes." Clara looked across the yard at Eli, who was lifting flour sacks like they weighed nothing, the dying light catching the gray in his hair. "Maybe we all need reminding," she said, "of who we could be, if we tried." Josie followed her gaze. Something knowing flickered in her gray eyes. "Maybe," she agreed. "Maybe we do." That night after dinner, after the children had been sent to bed and the house had settled into quiet, Clara stood at the kitchen window and watched the snow fall. She thought about Silas, about the cellar, about 14 years of darkness and fear. And she thought about Eli, about his steady hands and his wounded eyes and the way he'd defended her without hesitation. "You're still up." She turned. Eli stood in the doorway, a cup of coffee in his hands, his expression unreadable in the lamplight. "Couldn't sleep." "Nightmares." "Not exactly." She paused. "Just thinking." "About what?" "About you," she didn't say. "About how you make me feel safe for the first time in my life. About how terrifying that is. About tomorrow," she said instead. "And the day after. And all the days after that." Eli came to stand beside her at the window, close enough to feel his warmth but not touching. "Good thoughts or bad?" "I don't know yet. Both maybe." She looked at him. "I've never had a future before. Never thought past surviving the next hour, the next day. But now I think maybe I could. Have a future, I mean. Here, with..." She stopped, heat rising in her cheeks beneath the veil. "With us," Eli finished quietly. "With my family." "Yes." He was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. "I'd like that. Having you stay. Not as a servant. Not as an obligation. As..." He shook his head. "Hell, I'm no good at this." "At what?" "Words. Feelings. All the soft things Ruth used to handle." He set down his coffee and turned to face her fully. "I care about you, Clara. More than I should, maybe. More than makes sense." Clara's heart stopped. "Eli, you don't have to say anything. Don't have to feel the same way. Just wanted you to know. You've got a place here for as long as you want it. And if you ever want more than that, if you ever want..." He broke off, frustrated with his own inarticulation. "I'm making a mess of this." "No." Clara's voice came out barely a whisper. "You're not." She reached up slowly and touched his face, the first time she'd touched him voluntarily. His breath caught his eyes, finding hers through the veil. "I care about you too," she said. "I don't know what that means yet. Don't know if I'm capable of whatever comes next, but I care. And I'm not going anywhere." Eli's hand came up to cover hers, warm and rough and impossibly gentle. "That's enough," he said. "For now, that's more than enough." They stood there in the lamplight, hands touching, hearts beating, while outside the snow continued to fall and the future spread before them like an unwritten page. Clara didn't know what came next. Didn't know if she was brave enough or whole enough or healed enough for whatever this was becoming. But for the first time in 14 years, she wanted to find out. The days after that night at the window changed everything and nothing at all. Clara still wore the veil. Still slept in the corner of her room instead of the bed. Still flinched at sudden sounds and shadows that moved wrong. But something had shifted between her and Eli, a current that ran beneath every glance, every accidental touch, every conversation that lasted longer than it needed to. The children noticed. Of course they did. "Pa looks at you different," Tommy announced one morning over breakfast, his mouth full of eggs. "Like he used to look at Ma." "Tommy." Josie's voice cracked like a whip. "Mind your business." "What I'm just saying what I see." "Well, stop seeing it." Clara kept her head down, heat flooding her cheeks beneath the veil. Across the table, Eli cleared his throat. "Finish your breakfast," he said. "We've got fence posts to check before the next storm hits." The subject dropped, but Clara caught Josie watching her throughout the meal. Not with suspicion anymore, with something more complicated. Something that looked almost like hope. 2 weeks passed, then 3. Clara learned the rhythms of the ranch, which boards creaked, which doors stuck, which horse liked apples and which preferred carrots. She learned that Will drew pictures when he was anxious, that Tommy talked faster when he was scared, that Josie hid her grief behind sharp words and sharper silences. She learned that Eli woke before dawn and stood on the porch with his coffee staring at the mountains like he was waiting for something he couldn't name. One morning she joined him. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked without turning. "The dreams again. The cellar. Always the cellar." She wrapped her arms around herself against the cold. "Sometimes I wonder if I'll ever stop dreaming about it." "Maybe you won't. Maybe you'll just learn to wake up faster." He took a sip of coffee. "War dreams haven't stopped for me. 22 years and counting. But they don't control me anymore. Most nights anyway." "How did you manage that?" "Time. Stubbornness. Ruth." His voice softened on his wife's name. "She used to hold me when the dreams got bad. Wouldn't say anything, just held on until my heart slowed down. Made me feel like I wasn't alone in the dark." Clara thought about her own dark. The cellar. The endless nights of silence. "I've never had anyone to hold on to." Eli turned to look at her. In the gray dawn light, his face was all shadows and angles. "You do now," he said quietly. "If you want." Before Clara could respond, the kitchen door banged open and Tommy came barreling out. "Pa, there's a man coming up the road." Clara's blood went cold. She didn't need to ask who. Eli set down his coffee with deliberate calm. "How many?" "Just one, but he's got a badge." "Not Silas, then. Something worse, maybe." Clara's hands started to shake. "Get inside," Eli told her. "Stay with the children." "Eli, I'll handle it. Go." She went. But she didn't go far, just inside the door where she could hear everything through the cracked open window. The rider came into view a few minutes later. Deputy Marshal by the look of his coat. Young, maybe 25, with the nervous energy of someone who'd rather be anywhere else. "Mr. Brennan." He pulled up his horse and dismounted. "That's me." "I'm Deputy Marshal Collins, out of Helena." He pulled a paper from his coat. "Got some questions about a woman you purchased in Stillwater Creek 3 weeks ago. Name of Clara Whitfield." "She goes by Clara now. What about her?" "Her stepfather filed a complaint. Claims the sale was conducted under duress and should be invalidated." Collins shifted his weight. "Also claims the woman in question is mentally incompetent and unable to make legal decisions for herself." Eli's voice didn't change. "That's so." "Sir, I'm just doing my job. If you could produce the woman for questioning, I can verify her mental state, and she's not mentally incompetent, she's not under duress, and she's not going anywhere with you." Collins's hand moved toward his gun belt. "Mr. Brennan, I have to insist. Insist all you want." Eli took a step forward and Collins took an involuntary step back. "That woman was held prisoner for 14 years. Starved, beaten, locked in a cellar without light or human contact. You think I'm going to hand her over to the man who did that to her because he filed some paperwork? I don't know anything about—" "Then maybe you should, before you ride out here making demands based on a liar's word." Collins looked uncertain. Sir, the law. The law should protect people, not punish them for escaping abuse. Eli's voice hardened. You want to verify Clara's mental state? Fine. Come back with a real judge, not some bought and paid for county official, and we'll have a proper hearing. Until then, she stays here. Mr. Brennan, we're done talking. Collins stood there for a long moment, his face red with frustration and something that might have been shame. Then he mounted his horse. This isn't over, he said. The Pruitts have friends in Helena, important friends. They'll push this. Let them push. Eli's voice was cold as the wind. I've got friends too, and mine don't run from fights. The deputy rode away. Clara watched him go, her heart hammering against her ribs. Eli came back inside and found her standing by the window shaking. He's gone. For now. Clara couldn't keep the fear out of her voice. But he'll be back, with more men, more authority. Silas won't stop Eli. He can't afford to stop. Because of what you know. Yes. She pressed her hands against her eyes. I should have stayed in the cellar. Should have kept my mouth shut and my head down and... Hey! Eli's hands closed around her wrists, gentle but firm, pulling them away from her face. Look at me. She looked. Through the veil's eyeholes, she met his gaze. You did nothing wrong. Silas is the criminal here, not you, and I will not let him take you back. Do you understand? Whatever it takes? Whatever comes. You're not going back to that cellar. You can't fight the whole territory. Watch me. The fierceness in his voice made her chest ache. Why are you doing this? Why do you keep fighting for me? Because you're worth fighting for. His thumbs traced circles on her wrists over the scars from the ropes. Because 3 weeks ago I was a dead man walking, going through the motions, waiting to join Ruth in the ground. And then you came along and made me feel something I thought I'd buried forever. What? Hope. The word came out rough, like it cost him something. Stupid, stubborn, irrational hope. That maybe the world isn't all cruelty and loss. That maybe there's still a reason to get up in the morning. Clara felt tears building behind her eyes. I'm broken, Eli. I'm scared and damaged, and I don't know how to be anything else. Then we'll be broken together. He released her wrists and stepped back, giving her space. I'm not asking for anything you can't give, not asking for promises or declarations, just asking you to stay, to let me protect you, to give us both a chance to figure out what comes next. Stay. Such a simple word, such an impossible gift. I'll stay, she whispered, for as long as you'll have me. Eli nodded, once his expression softening. Then that's settled. Now we need to prepare. Silas won't wait long before his next move. He was right. 3 days later, the storm hit. Not a legal storm, a real one. Snow came down in sheets, wind howling across the mountains like something alive and angry. By nightfall, the drifts were waist-deep and still rising. We need to get the horses in, Eli said, pulling on his coat. Tommy, Will, you're with me. Josie, keep the fire going. Clara, make sure the children stay warm. They went out into the white chaos. Clara watched from the window until they disappeared, swallowed by the snow. An hour passed, then 2. They should be back by now, Josie said, her voice tight. The storm's making everything harder. Clara tried to sound calm. They're probably just moving slow. But fear was building in her chest. Something felt wrong. Something beyond the weather. 3 hours. 4. I'm going after them. Josie grabbed her coat. No. Clara caught her arm. Your father said to stay here. My father's been gone too long. Something's happened. Then I'll go. You stay with Will. Josie stared at her. You can barely see through that veil. You'll get lost in minutes. Then come with me. But we're not sending a 12-year-old into a blizzard alone. They bundled up coats, scarves, gloves, everything they could find. Clara tied a rope around her waist and handed the other end to Josie. If we get separated, pull hard. Don't let go. I won't let go. They went out into the storm. The cold hit Clara like a physical assault. Wind tore at her veil, snow stinging every exposed inch of skin. She couldn't see more than a few feet in any direction. "This way!" Josie shouted over the wind. "The barn's this way!" They struggled through drifts, the rope between them pulled taut. Clara's lungs burned. Her fingers went numb inside her gloves. The cellar had been cold, but nothing like this. This was cold that could kill, cold that didn't care how much you'd already suffered. The barn loomed out of the whiteness like a ghost. Clara pushed through the door and nearly collapsed. "Pa!" Josie's scream cut through the howling wind. "Pa, where are you?" The horses were there huddled in their stalls. But no Eli, no Tommy. The back paddock. Clara grabbed Josie's arm. "He said something about checking the back fence. They might have gotten trapped." Back into the storm. Back into the killing cold. Clara couldn't feel her feet anymore. Couldn't feel her hands. The veil was frozen stiff against her face. Ice crystals forming on the fabric. Then she heard it, a voice faint beneath the wind. "Help someone, help." Tommy's voice. Clara ran, stumbled, fell into a drift, fought her way back up, kept running. The rope around her waist yanked tight as Josie struggled to keep up. She found them in the shallow ravine behind the north pasture. Eli was on the ground, blood staining the snow around his head. Tommy crouched beside him, crying, his small hands pressed against his father's chest. "Pa won't wake up," Tommy sobbed. "He fell and hit his head, and he won't wake up." Clara dropped to her knees beside them. Eli's face was pale, his breathing shallow. Blood matted his dark hair, a gash on his temple, deep and ugly. "We have to get him inside." Clara's voice came out steady despite the panic clawing at her chest. "Tommy, can you help me lift him? He's too heavy. Josie's coming, the three of us together. We can do this." Josie arrived, her face white with fear. "Is he? He's alive. Help me." They lifted Eli between them, Clara and Josie on either side, Tommy supporting his legs. He was heavy, so heavy, dead weight that threatened to pull them all down into the snow. One step, then another. The house seemed impossibly far away, a dim shape in the swirling white. Clara's arms screamed. Her back felt like it was breaking. But she didn't let go. Couldn't let go. This man had saved her from the platform, from Silas, from herself. She would not let him die in the snow. "Almost there," Josie gasped. "Almost. The door." Will flung it open, his face terrified. "What happened? Is Pa?" "Move," Clara commanded. "Get blankets, hot water, clean cloth for bandages." They got Eli onto the floor near the fire. Clara stripped off her gloves and pressed her frozen fingers against his neck, searching for a pulse. There, faint but steady. Alive. "He's alive," she said. "But he's losing blood. I need to see the wound." She worked by firelight, her hands steadier than they had any right to be. The gash was deep. He'd hit a rock when he fell, probably. But it wasn't as bad as it looked. Head wounds bled heavily. She'd learned that in the cellar after Silas's beatings. "Needle and thread," she told Josie. "Your mother's sewing kit. You're going to sew him up. Unless you know another way to close a wound." Josie ran. Clara pressed a cloth against Eli's head, willing the bleeding to slow. His face was slack, peaceful in a way that terrified her. "Don't you dare," she whispered. "Don't you dare leave these children. Don't you dare leave me." The needle was thin, the thread black. Clara's hands trembled as she made the first stitch. Eli groaned, his eyes fluttered. "Hold him down," Clara ordered. "This is going to hurt." Tommy and Will grabbed their father's arms. Josie held his legs. Clara sewed in, out, closing the gash one stitch at a time while Eli writhed and groaned beneath her hands. 7 stitches. 8. 9. Done. Clara sat back exhausted, her hands covered in blood. Eli had stopped moving, but his breathing was stronger now, more regular. "Is he going to be okay?" Will's voice was small, scared. "I think so. The wound is closed. He just needs to rest and heal." "You saved him." Josie was staring at her with something like wonder. "You went out in that storm, found him, carried him back, sewed him up. You saved his life." Clara looked down at her bloody hands. "He saved mine first. It's only fair." They kept vigil through the night. The storm raged outside, but inside the house was warm, quiet, safe. Clara sat beside Eli's makeshift bed, holding his hand, watching his chest rise and fall. Sometime after midnight, his eyes opened. "Clara." His voice was hoarse, confused. "I'm here." "The children. Safe. Everyone's safe." He tried to sit up, winced, fell back. "My head." "You fell. Hit a rock. I had to stitch you up." "You stitched?" He blinked at her, processing. "How? 14 years in a cellar. You learn to patch yourself up, or you don't survive." She squeezed his hand. "How do you feel?" "Like someone drove a spike through my skull." A pause. "Like I'm the luckiest man alive. Lucky you almost died." "I didn't die, because you came for me." His eyes found hers through the veil. "You came out into that storm, could have gotten yourself killed. Why?" Clara's throat tightened. "Because I couldn't lose you. Because you're the first person who ever made me feel like I was worth something. Because—" She stopped. The words were too big, too frightening. "Because what?" "Because I love you." The words fell out before she could catch them. "I know I shouldn't. No, it's too fast, too complicated, too everything. But I do. I love you, Eli. And I couldn't let you die without telling you." Eli was silent for so long she thought she'd made a terrible mistake. Then his hand tightened around hers. "Clara, look at me." She looked. "I love you too. Have since the moment I saw you on that platform, this broken, beautiful woman who deserved so much more than what the world gave her. I love you, and I'm not going to die on you. Not tonight. Not for a long time yet." "You can't promise that." "I can promise to try." He raised her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles. "I can promise that every morning I wake up, you'll be the first thing I think about. And every night before I sleep, you'll be the last." Clara felt tears streaming down her face, soaking into the veil. She didn't try to stop them. "You haven't even seen my face," she whispered. "You don't know what's under here. Don't need to see your face to know who you are. Don't need to see scars to know you're beautiful." He tugged gently on her hand. "Come here." She leaned down. He reached up, his fingers touching the edge of her veil. "Can I?" Her heart stopped. 14 years of hiding. 14 years of believing she was too hideous to be seen. But this man had risked his life for her, had defended her against Silas, against the law, against the whole damn world. If she couldn't show him, she couldn't show anyone. "Yes," she breathed. His fingers found the ties at the back of her head. Slowly, gently, he loosened them. The veil fell away. Cold air hit her face, her whole face, scars and all. Clara held her breath, waiting for the flinch, the recoil, the disgust. It didn't come. Eli's eyes moved over her features. The unmarked side, the scarred side, the puckered tissue that pulled at her eye and twisted her mouth. All of it. "There you are," he said softly. "There's my Clara. I'm hideous. You're alive. You're strong. You survived things that would have broken most people." His thumb traced the edge of her scar, feather light. "This mark. This is proof of what you endured. This is a badge of courage, not a brand of shame. Clara couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. No one had ever looked at her like this, like she was precious, like she was whole, like she was worth looking at. "I'm going to kiss you now," Eli said. "If that's all right." She nodded, not trusting her voice. He pulled her down gently and pressed his lips to hers. Soft, warm, reverent. Not demanding anything, just giving. Clara kissed him back. Her tears falling onto his face, her hands trembling where they pressed against his chest. When they finally broke apart, Eli smiled. A real smile, the first she'd ever seen from him. "Welcome to the family, Clara." The storm broke by morning. Weak winter sunlight filtered through the windows, turning the snow to diamonds. Inside the house, Eli slept, his wound cleaned, and bandaged, his color slowly returning. Clara sat by the fire, the veil in her hands. She turned it over, studying the black fabric that had hidden her for so long. Josie appeared beside her. "Are you going to put it back on?" "I don't know." Clara traced the crude eye holes with her finger. "Part of me wants to. It's safer behind this." "What does the other part want?" "To burn it. To never hide again." Clara looked at Josie, her face fully visible for the first time. "What do you think?" Josie studied her, the scars, the twisted skin, all of it. Then she smiled. "I think you look like someone who's been through hell and came out the other side. I think you look like someone worth knowing." She paused. "I think Ma would have loved you." Clara's eyes burned. "You're too wise for 12. Ma used to say the same thing." Josie reached out and touched Clara's scarred cheek, the first time anyone had touched that side of her face since the wound healed. "Keep the veil if it makes you feel safe, but you don't need it here, not with us." "What about Town? What about Silas?" "Town will learn to deal with it. And Silas." Josie's eyes went hard. "Silas better hope he never comes near this family again, because he won't just be facing Pa, he'll be facing all of us." Clara looked at the veil one more time. Then she stood, walked to the fire, and dropped it into the flames. The fabric caught instantly, curling and blackening. 14 years of hiding going up in smoke. "No more hiding," Clara said quietly. "No more fear." Behind her, Tommy and Will came thundering down the stairs. "Pa's awake. He's asking for—" Tommy stopped short, his eyes going wide. "Clara, is that you?" "It's me." "You took off the—" He trailed off, staring at her face. Then his expression shifted into a huge grin. "Cool, you look like a pirate." "Tommy," Josie groaned. "What pirates are cool, Will? Doesn't she look like a pirate?" Will came closer, studying Clara's face with his usual solemnity. "I think she looks brave, like a warrior." Clara laughed, a real laugh, the first one in 14 years. "Pirate and warrior, I can live with that." "Pa's asking for you," Tommy said. "Better go before he tries to get up again." Clara went. At the door to Eli's room, she paused, her hand on the frame. He lay propped against pillows, looking pale but alert. When he saw her, really saw her in full daylight, no veil, nothing hidden. His face softened into something that took her breath away. "There she is," he said. "My Clara, finally letting me see her." She crossed to the bed and took his hand. "I burned the veil." "Good. Never liked the damn thing anyway." He tugged her down to sit beside him. "How do you feel?" "Without it." "Terrified." She paused. "And free. Like I've been holding my breath for 14 years and I finally remembered how to exhale. That's a good feeling." "It is." She looked at their joined hands, his rough and calloused, hers scarred from years of labor. "What happens now, with Silas, with the law? Now we fight, on our terms, not his." Eli's jaw set. "I've been thinking. That deputy said the Pruitts have friends in Helena. Well, I know people too. People who remember what I did in the war. People who owe me favors." You'd call in favors for me. I'd call in everything for you. He brought her hand to his lips. But first, I need to heal. And you need to practice being seen. Think you can manage that. Clara thought about the burned veil, about Josie's acceptance and Tommy's grin and Will's quiet declaration that she looked like a warrior. I think I can try, she said. One day at a time. One day at a time. Eli pulled her close, careful of his injured head, and pressed his forehead against hers. That's all any of us can do. Outside, the sun climbed higher, melting the storm's remnants into rivers of light. Inside, a family pulled closer together, bound not by blood, but by choice, by sacrifice, by love that had grown in the most unlikely soil. And somewhere in town, Silas Pruitt was planning his next move. But that was a problem for tomorrow. Today, Clara had burned her mask, kissed the man she loved, and learned what it felt like to stand in daylight without fear. Today, that was enough. Eli healed faster than he had any right to. Within a week, he was up and moving, ignoring Clara's protests that he should rest longer. Within 2, he was back to ranch work, though he let her change his bandages each night and didn't argue when she made him sit down every few hours. Stubborn man, Clara muttered, watching him chop wood from the kitchen window. He's always been like that. Josie appeared at her elbow, a knowing smile on her face. Ma used to say he'd argue with a mule and win. I believe it. She also said the only person who could out-stubborn him was her. Josie paused. Looks like she was wrong about that. Clara turned to look at her. What do you mean? I mean you burned your veil, kissed my pa, and you're still here, still fighting. Josie's smile widened. That's pretty stubborn. Before Clara could respond, the sound of horses reached them. Multiple horses moving fast. Eli dropped his axe and was on the porch before Clara reached the door. His hand moved to the rifle propped against the rail. Stay inside, he said without looking back. Eli. Inside, now. Clara retreated, but only to the window. Josie was already there, the twins crowding behind her. 6 riders came up the road. At their head rode Silas Pruitt, his face twisted with triumph. Beside him, Deputy Collins. Behind them, 4 men Clara didn't recognize, rough-looking, with the hard eyes of hired muscle. Brennan, Silas's voice carried across the yard. I've come for what's mine. Eli stepped off the porch rifle held loose at his side. Nothing here belongs to you. The girl does. Got papers right here. Silas waved a document, signed by Judge Whitmore himself. Says the sale was invalid due to mental incompetence. Says Clara Whitfield is to be returned to her legal guardians immediately. Whitmore's a drunk and a crook. Everyone in the territory knows it. Don't matter what everyone knows. Matters what the law says. Silas smiled that cold, oily smile. Now you can hand her over peaceful-like, or my friends here can help convince you. The hired men shifted in their saddles' hands, moving toward their guns. Eli didn't flinch. You bring 6 men to take 1 woman. That's supposed to impress me. It's supposed to show you were serious. Silas nudged his horse forward. I don't want trouble, Brennan. Just want what's owed to me. Give me the girl and we'll ride out of here. No harm done. Except to her. She's my stepdaughter, my responsibility. What happens to her ain't your concern. I made it my concern the day I bought her off that platform. Eli raised the rifle. Now get off my land. Can't do that. Silas's smile vanished. I need her, Brennan. Need her back where she belongs, where she can't talk to anyone, can't tell anyone what she thinks she knows. What she knows about Dawson, you mean? The name hit Silas like a slap. His face went white, then red. She told you. She told me everything. Then you're both dead. Silas's voice dropped to something ugly, something Clara recognized from the cellar. Boys, take him. The hired men drew their weapons, 4 guns against 1. Eli didn't move. You really want to do this? His voice was calm, almost conversational. 4 of you against me. Those odds worked out real well for the Confederates at Chickamauga. You're one man. I'm one man who's killed more men than all of you combined. Eli's eyes never wavered. First one to move gets a bullet between the eyes. Second one gets one in the chest. After that, things get interesting. Nobody moved. Pa. Josie's voice came from the doorway. Clara turned to see her standing there, her mother's shotgun in her hands. I've got the one on the left. Josie, get back inside. I can shoot and you know it. Ma taught me. Me too. Tommy appeared at her side, clutching the small rifle Eli had given him for hunting rabbits. I'm not letting them hurt Clara. Or Pa. Will emerged last, a kitchen knife in his hand. His face was pale but set. 4 children armed and ready to fight. Clara's heart cracked open. Well, well, Silas laughed. A whole family of fools. This is touching, really. But we've got you outnumbered, outgunned, and out of options. Do you... Clara stepped onto the porch. Every head turned. Silas's eyes went wide at the sight of her face, bare scars visible, no veil to hide behind. Clara. His voice faltered. What happened to your... I burned it. She walked forward until she stood beside Eli. I'm done hiding, Silas. Done being scared of you. You should be scared. But his voice had lost some of its certainty. You know what I'm capable of. I know what you did to James Dawson. I know you killed him with a shovel and buried him on your property. Clara's voice rang out clear and strong. I heard you confess it to Harriet when I was 11 years old. Heard you say his body was under the old oak tree behind your barn. Deputy Collins shifted in his saddle. What's she talking about? She's lying. Silas's face contorted with rage. She's insane, I told you. I'm not insane. I'm not incompetent. I'm just the girl you locked in a cellar for 14 years because I knew too much. Clara took another step forward. Did you tell the deputy that part? Did you tell him why you really wanted me back? Shut up. Did you tell him about the bruises, the beatings, the days without food, when I made too much noise? Shut your mouth. Did you tell him I was 8 years old when you gave me this? She pointed to her scarred face. When you hit me so hard with a horse strap that I couldn't see out of my left eye for a month. Collins was staring at Silas now, something shifting in his expression. Mr. Pruitt, these are serious allegations. She's lying. She's always been a liar, ever since she was a child. Then dig up the oak tree. Clara's voice was steady. If I'm lying, you'll find nothing. If I'm telling the truth, you'll find what's left of James Dawson. Silence fell over the yard. The hired men were looking at each other uncertainly. Collins had gone pale. This is ridiculous, Silas sputtered. I'm not digging up anything based on the ravings of a... I'll dig. Everyone turned. A voice from the road knew riders coming up fast. Clara counted 3, then 5, then 10. Mrs. Chen rode at their head, her silver hair flying, and behind her came townspeople. Ranchers, shopkeepers, the blacksmith, the reverend. Heard there might be trouble out at the Brennan place, Mrs. Chen said, reining her horse to a stop. Thought we'd come see for ourselves. This is none of your concern, Silas snapped. Girl who makes the best bread in 3 counties, I'd say that's everyone's concern. Mrs. Chen's eyes were hard as flint. And if what she says is true, if there's a body buried on your land, then we're all going to want to know about it. You'd take the word of a scarred-up freak over mine. I'd take the word of a woman who's never lied to me over a man who lies as easy as breathing. Mrs. Chen dismounted. Deputy Collins, you want to do your job? Start with the oak tree. Collins looked from Silas to Mrs. Chen to the growing crowd of townspeople. Whatever calculation ran through his head, it came up short on Silas's side. Mr. Pruitt, he said slowly, I think we need to take a ride to your property. You can't be serious. I'm very serious. Collins's hand moved to his gun. You can come willingly, or I can arrest you for threatening Mr. Brennan and his family. Your choice. Silas's face twisted through a dozen emotions: rage, fear, calculation, desperation. His eyes found Clara's, and in that moment, she saw the man who'd haunted her nightmares for 14 years. But she wasn't afraid anymore. "It's over," she said quietly. "Whatever you do to me now, it's over. They're going to find him, Silas. They're going to find what you did." "You bitch!" The word came out strangled. "You ungrateful, hideous little bitch! I should have let you burn in that fire, should have finished what I started." He reached for his gun. Three things happened at once. Eli's rifle came up. Clara threw herself sideways, and a shot rang out not from Eli's gun, but from somewhere in the crowd. Silas's hand exploded in a spray of blood. He screamed, his pistol falling into the snow. Clara looked up to see Mrs. Chen lowering a small derringer smoke, curling from the barrel. "My store, my rules," the old woman said calmly. "Rule number 1, nobody draws on my customers." Chaos erupted. The hired men threw down their weapons, wanting no part of a fight they hadn't signed up for. Collins was shouting orders, trying to restore control. The townspeople surged forward, everyone talking at once. Eli reached Clara first. His hands were on her face, her shoulders checking for injury. "Are you hurt? Did he—" "I'm fine." She grabbed his hands, steadying them. "I'm fine, Eli. You threw yourself at a man with a gun. He was going to shoot you. So you decided to become a target instead." His voice cracked. "Clara, if something had happened to you—" "Nothing happened. I'm here. I'm alive." She pressed her forehead against his. "We're both alive." Around them, the yard was descending into organized chaos. Collins had Silas in handcuffs, the older man still howling about his hand. The hired men were being disarmed and questioned. Mrs. Chen was directing the townspeople like a general marshaling troops. "Someone needs to ride to the Pruitt place," she called out. "Dig up that tree before anyone has a chance to move anything." "I'll go." The blacksmith stepped forward. "Take a few men with me." "I'll come too." This from Reverend Hawthorne, his weathered face grim. If there's a body, it deserves proper Christian witness. They rode out, and the waiting began. Clara sat on the porch steps, Eli beside her, the children clustered around them. Nobody spoke. There wasn't much to say, not until they knew for certain. An hour passed, then 2. The sun was beginning to set when the blacksmith returned. His face told them everything they needed to know. "Found him," he said heavily. "What was left of him anyway? Been there a long time, 10 years, maybe more. But there was enough to identify. Wedding ring still on his finger, engraved with his wife's name." Collins turned to Silas, who had stopped struggling, stopped protesting, stopped everything. He sat slumped against his horse, his face gray, his bandaged hand cradled against his chest. "Silas Pruitt, you're under arrest for the murder of James Dawson." Collins's voice was formal, official. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say. It was an accident." Silas's voice was hollow. "We argued. He wanted the land, wouldn't take no for an answer. I pushed him. He fell, hit his head. You buried him." Clara's voice cut through his excuses. "You buried him, and you never told anyone. And then you locked me away so I couldn't tell. You were just a child. You wouldn't have understood." "I understood enough." Clara stood walking toward him. Eli moved to follow, but she held up her hand. This was hers to finish. She stopped in front of Silas and looked at the man who'd stolen 14 years of her life. He seemed smaller now, older, pathetic. "I spent 14 years in that cellar," she said. 14 years in the dark, believing I was a monster, believing I deserved to be hidden away. You did that to me, not the fire, not the scars, you. Clara, I'm not finished." Her voice hardened. "You took everything from me, my childhood, my freedom, my belief that I was worth anything at all. And for what? To protect yourself. To hide your crime. I never meant. I don't care what you meant." Clara leaned in close. "But I want you to know something. I survived. Despite everything you did, I survived. I found people who love me. I found a family. I found a life worth living." She straightened up. "And you're going to prison. Or the gallows. Either way, you'll never hurt anyone again." She turned her back on him. "Take him away, deputy. I'm done looking at him." Collins nodded and hauled Silas to his feet. The hired men were rounded up as well, accessories at minimum. The whole sorry procession headed back toward town, leaving the Brennan ranch quieter than it had been in weeks. Mrs. Chen approached Clara. Her sharp eyes softened with something like respect. "Took courage what you did, standing up to him like that." "I had help." Clara looked at Eli, at the children, at the townspeople who'd ridden out to support her. "More help than I ever expected. That's how it works out here. We look after our own." Mrs. Chen patted her arm. "You're one of us now, Clara. Has been since Brennan brought you home." About time the rest of the town caught up. The crowd dispersed slowly, neighbors pausing to shake Eli's hand to offer Clara words of support. Some of them still looked at her scars with discomfort, but nobody looked away. Nobody called her a specter or a curse. When the last wagon had disappeared down the road, Eli pulled Clara into his arms and held her. "It's over," he said against her hair. "It's really over. I can't believe it." Her voice was muffled against his chest. "All those years I thought he'd never face justice. Thought I'd carry that secret to my grave." "You carried it long enough." He pulled back to look at her face. "Now you can let it go." "Can I?" Clara shook her head. 14 years doesn't just disappear, Eli. The memories, the nightmares, the fear, that's all still there. "I know, but now you've got people to help you carry it." He cupped her scarred cheek in his hand. "You've got us." "Pa!" Josie's voice interrupted. She stood at the porch rail, the twins beside her. "Is it really over? Is Clara safe now?" "She's safe." Eli kept his arm around Clara's waist. "Silas is going to prison. He can't hurt anyone anymore." "Good." Tommy's voice was fierce. "He was a bad man. I wanted to shoot him." "I know you did, buddy. But Mrs. Chen shot him first. Mrs. Chen is surprisingly well armed." Eli's mouth twitched. "Don't tell her I said that." "Can Clara stay forever now?" Will asked, his solemn eyes fixed on her face. "She's not going to have to leave." Clara looked at Eli. He looked back at her, something unspoken passing between them. "That depends on Clara," Eli said carefully. "This is her choice. It's always been her choice." "I want to stay." The words came out stronger than Clara expected. "If you'll have me, we'll have you." Josie descended the steps and threw her arms around Clara. "We'll always have you." Tommy and Will piled on, turning the embrace into a chaotic, wonderful mess of arms and warmth. Clara laughed, really laughed for the first time in longer than she could remember. Okay. Eli waded in, separating the tangle. "Let's get inside before we all freeze to death. I think this calls for a celebration. Clara, feel like making one of those pies you've been experimenting with. Apple or cherry tart, both. This is a 2-pie kind of day." They went inside, the warmth of the house wrapping around them like a blanket. Clara set to work in the kitchen, the children helping or hindering in Tommy's case, while Eli built up the fire and set the table. It felt domestic, normal, like something out of a dream Clara had never dared to have. "You're thinking too hard again." Eli appeared at her elbow, stealing a slice of apple from her cutting board. "Just adjusting. This morning I was afraid Silas would drag me back to the cellar. Now he's in handcuffs and I'm making pie. Life moves fast sometimes. Too fast." Clara paused, her knife hovering over the cutting board. "Eli, what happens now? With us, I mean." He was quiet for a moment. Then he turned her to face him, his hands gentle on her shoulders. "What do you want to happen?" "I don't know. I've never—" She stopped, frustrated with her own uncertainty. "I've never had a future before, never had the chance to think about what comes next." Then think about it now. No pressure, no expectations. Just, what do you want, Clara? If you could have anything. What did she want? The question was so foreign, it took her a moment to even process it. She thought about the cellar, the darkness, the years of isolation and fear. Then she thought about this house, the warmth, the laughter, the children's voices, about Eli's steady presence, his patience, his love. I want this, she said finally. This house, this family, you. She met his eyes. I want to wake up every morning knowing I'm safe. I want to watch these children grow up. I want to learn what it feels like to be happy. Eli's expression softened. That's a pretty good list. Is it possible? Can I really have all that? You can have whatever you're willing to reach for. He pressed his forehead against hers. And I'll be right here reaching with you. Gross. Tommy's voice broke the moment. Are you going to kiss again? Because if you are, I'm leaving. Josie smacked his shoulder. Mind your business. Kissing is my business when it's happening in my kitchen. It's not your kitchen. Children. Eli's voice carried that note of fond exasperation. If you want pie, stop arguing and start helping Clara with the crust. The argument devolved into a flower fight, which devolved into chaos, which somehow resulted in 2 slightly lopsided but delicious pies. They ate them warm from the oven, gathered around the table, the fire crackling, the wind howling outside. This is perfect, Will said quietly. Just like this. Nobody disagreed. Later, after the children were in bed and the house had settled into nighttime quiet, Clara stood at the window and watched the stars emerge. The sky was clear for the first time in days, each point of light sharp and brilliant against the darkness. Can't sleep. Eli joined her 2 cups of coffee in his hands. Don't want to. Afraid if I close my eyes I'll wake up and this will all have been a dream. It's not a dream. It's real. He handed her a cup. All of it. The good parts and the hard parts. The pie and the gunfight. All real. The gunfight. Clara shook her head. Mrs. Chen shot Silas. That's going to take a while to process. Mrs. Chen is full of surprises. Eli sipped his coffee. Reminded me of some of the women I knew during the war. Quiet, unassuming, deadly when they needed to be. Were there a lot of women like that? More than people realized. Nurses who picked up rifles when the lines broke. Farmers' wives who defended their homesteads against raiders. His voice went distant. War doesn't care about gender. It makes killers of everyone it touches. Clara studied his profile in the starlight. Do you still feel like a killer? Sometimes. Less than I used to. He turned to look at her. Having something to live for helps. Someone to live for. Eli. She set down her coffee and took his hands. I need to tell you something. What? I love you. I know I said it before when you were hurt, but I want to say it again now. When everything's calm. When there's no crisis. His hands tightened around hers. Clara. Let me finish. She took a breath. I've never loved anyone. Never thought I was capable of it. But you make me feel things I didn't know I could feel. Safe. Valued. Wanted. Her voice cracked. You make me feel like I deserve to be alive. You do deserve it. You deserve everything good this world has to offer. I don't know about everything, but I know I want this. Whatever this is between us, I want to see where it goes. Eli was quiet for a long moment. Then he released her hands and reached into his pocket. I was going to wait, he said. Give you time to adjust. Time to figure out what you wanted without pressure. But after today... He opened his palm. A ring lay there, simple silver, worn smooth with age. This was my mother's. She gave it to me before she died, told me to save it for someone special. He held it up to the starlight. I gave it to Ruth on our wedding day. After she passed, I put it away. Couldn't look at it. Clara's heart stopped. Eli, I'm not asking for an answer right now. Not asking for anything except that you think about it. He pressed the ring into her hand. But I want you to know I want you, Clara. Not just for now, forever. However much forever we've got left. Clara stared at the ring in her palm. Such a small thing to carry so much meaning. You want to marry me. I do. Even though I'm scarred. Even though I come with more baggage than a freight train. Even though I still have nightmares and flinch at shadows and don't know how to be normal. Normal is overrated. His voice was soft. I just want you. Exactly as you are. Scars and baggage and all. Clara thought about the cellar. About the years of darkness, the belief that she'd die alone and unloved. About the girl who'd stood on that auction platform, convinced she was worth less than livestock. That girl was gone. In her place stood a woman scarred, yes, but surviving. Stronger than she'd known. Braver than she'd believed. Yes, she said. Eli blinked. Yes. Yes. I'll marry you. Clara slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. I'll marry you, Eli Brennan. And I'll spend the rest of my life being grateful that you saw something worth saving in a girl nobody else wanted. His face transformed. Joy, relief, love, all of it written there, open and unguarded. Clara. He breathed her name like a prayer. Then he pulled her into his arms and kissed her deep and thorough, while the stars blazed overhead and the future stretched out before them. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Clara laughed. The children are going to lose their minds. Tommy's going to want to plan the whole thing. Josie's going to insist on doing my hair. Will's going to write a poem. He does that for special occasions. Eli was grinning now. We should probably tell them in the morning. Probably. Clara looked down at the ring on her finger. Mrs. Brennan. Clara Brennan. That's going to take some getting used to. You've got time. We both do. Eli tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the scarred side touching it as naturally as the unmarked. All the time in the world. They stood at the window until the coffee went cold and the fire burned low, planning and dreaming and learning what it felt like to hope without fear. The ranch was quiet around them. The children slept peacefully. And somewhere in town, Silas Pruitt sat in a cell, his crimes finally catching up to him. Tomorrow there would be details to sort out. Legal matters, wedding plans, the slow work of building a life together. But tonight, there was just this two people who'd found each other against all odds, holding on tight, refusing to let go. Clara Whitfield had been called a specter, a curse, a monster. But she was none of those things. She was Clara Brennan now, wife-to-be, mother-in-waiting, a woman who'd walked through fire and come out the other side. And she was finally, impossibly home. The news spread through Stillwater Creek like wildfire. Eli Brennan was marrying the Specter, the scarred girl from the auction platform, the woman who'd spent 14 years in a cellar. Some said he'd lost his mind. Others said it was about time. Mrs. Chen said anyone who had a problem with it could take their business elsewhere. Clara heard the whispers when she went to town, but they didn't cut the way they used to. She walked through the streets with her head high, her face bare, the ring on her finger catching the winter sunlight. Let them talk. Let them stare. She had nothing left to hide. You're getting good at this, Eli said as they loaded supplies into the wagon. The not caring thing. I'm getting good at pretending not to care. Clara handed him a sack of flour. The actual not caring might take a while longer. Fair enough. He paused, watching her face. You know we could wait. Give people time to adjust. Have the wedding in spring when... No. The word came out sharper than she intended. I've waited 14 years for a life. I'm not waiting anymore. Eli smiled. That real smile, the one she'd only started seeing after the storm. Yes, ma'am. They were married 3 weeks later on a Sunday morning so cold the church windows frosted over. Reverend Hawthorne performed the ceremony, his weathered voice filling the small sanctuary. Mrs. Chen sat in the front row, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief she swore was for her cold. The blacksmith and his wife were there. The general store clerk. A dozen other townspeople who'd decided that courage and survival mattered more than scars. Clara wore a dress Josie had helped her alter, one of Ruth's cream-colored with lace at the collar. It felt strange to wear a dead woman's wedding dress to marry her husband, but when Clara had said as much, Josie had shaken her head. Ma would have wanted this. She would have wanted Pa to be happy again. The girl had touched the fabric with gentle fingers. And she would have loved you. I know she would. Now Josie stood at the altar, as Clara's witness, her gray eyes bright with tears she refused to let fall. Tommy and Will flanked their father, scrubbed clean, and dressed in their Sunday best, looking uncomfortable but proud. Do you, Clara Whitfield, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband? Clara looked at Eli. At his steady eyes, his scarred eyebrow, the gray threading through his dark hair. At the man who'd bought her freedom, defended her honor, and taught her what it meant to be loved. I do. And do you, Elijah Brennan, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do. His voice was rough with emotion. I surely do. Then by the power vested in me by God and the territory of Montana, I pronounce you husband and wife. Reverend Hawthorne smiled. You may kiss your bride. Eli cupped her face in his hands, both sides smooth and scarred, and kissed her with a tenderness that made her knees weak. Behind them, Tommy made gagging noises until Josie elbowed him into silence. Ladies and gentlemen, the Reverend announced, I present to you Mr. and Mrs. Elijah Brennan. The congregation applauded. Mrs. Chen was openly weeping now. And Clara stood there in her borrowed dress, her new husband's arm around her waist, and felt something she'd never felt before. Complete. The reception was held at the ranch neighbors, bringing food, children running wild music from a fiddle someone had produced. Clara moved through it all in a daze, accepting congratulations, answering questions, trying to remember how to smile without it feeling like a mask. You look overwhelmed. Josie appeared at her elbow with a cup of cider. Want me to chase everyone off? No, it's fine. It's good. Clara took the cider gratefully. I never imagined this. Any of this. A wedding. People celebrating. A family. Well, you've got all three now. Josie clinked her cup against Clara's. Welcome to the Brennans. We're loud, we're stubborn, and we're terrible at minding our own business. But we love hard. I'm starting to notice. Good. Because you're stuck with us forever. Josie's expression softened. I know I wasn't welcoming. At first, I was scared you'd try to replace Ma, try to make us forget her. I would never. I know that now. But it took me a while. Josie looked across the room to where Eli was laughing at something the blacksmith had said. Pa's different with you. Lighter. Like some of the weight he's been carrying finally lifted. She turned back to Clara. Ma would be grateful for that. And so am I. Clara felt tears prick her eyes. Josie. Don't get all weepy on me. Tommy will never let either of us live it down. But Josie was smiling. Go find your husband. I'll keep the food coming and the twins out of trouble. Clara found Eli on the porch, away from the noise, looking out at the snow-covered fields. Hiding? She asked, slipping her hand into his. Breathing. It's a lot of people. It is. She leaned against his shoulder. Thank you. For what? For this. All of this. The wedding, the family, the life I never thought I'd have. She looked up at him. For seeing me when no one else would. I told you before. I saw a person worth saving. He kissed her forehead. Turns out she saved me right back. They stood there in comfortable silence, watching the sun descend toward the mountains. Inside the party continued laughter music, the sound of children shrieking with joy. Outside the world was quiet and cold and beautiful. Eli. Yeah. What happened to Silas? She hadn't asked before, hadn't wanted to know. But now, on this day of new beginnings, she needed to close that chapter completely. Trials set for next month. Judge from Helena, a real one, not Whitmore. Eli's voice hardened. They've got the body. They've got your testimony. He's not getting out of this. Will I have to testify in court? Probably. You okay with that? Clara thought about it. Thought about standing in a courtroom facing Silas, telling the whole world what he'd done. The idea still scared her. She'd be lying if she said otherwise. But she wasn't the same girl who'd stood on that auction platform. Wasn't the same woman who'd hidden behind a veil. She'd faced down Silas once already. She could do it again. Yes, she said. I'm okay with it. Good, because I'll be right there with you. Every step. I know you will. The party wound down as the sun set. Neighbors departed with well wishes and promises to visit. Mrs. Chen pressed a package into Clara's hands. Wedding present, don't argue, and rode off before Clara could thank her. By nightfall, the house was quiet. The twins had exhausted themselves and gone to bed early. Josie was reading by the fire, pretending not to watch, as Clara and Eli cleaned up the last of the dishes. You don't have to do that. Eli took a plate from her hands. It's your wedding day. Go rest. I don't know how to rest. I've been working since I was old enough to hold a broom. Then learn. He set the plate down and turned her toward the stairs. Go. I've got this. Clara went, but she didn't go to the bedroom. Instead, she found herself standing in front of the mirror in the hallway, the one she'd avoided for weeks after burning the veil. The woman staring back was a stranger. Same scars, same twisted features, but the eyes were different. Brighter, more alive. You look like someone who's been through hell and decided to build a garden anyway. Clara turned. Josie stood at the foot of the stairs, her book tucked under her arm. Is that one of your mother's sayings? No, that one's mine. Josie climbed the stairs and stopped beside her. Ma used to say that the strongest flowers grow in the hardest soil. I think she'd say you were proof of that. I don't feel strong. Most days I still feel like I'm pretending. Everyone's pretending. That's the secret nobody tells you. Josie's gray eyes met hers in the mirror. Even Pa. Even Ma when she was alive. We're all just making it up as we go. That's terrifying. That's freedom. Josie smiled. Good night, Clara. I mean... She paused, something shifting in her expression. Good night, Ma. The word hit Clara like a thunderbolt. Josie! But the girl was already gone. Her footsteps retreating down the hall, leaving Clara standing alone with the reflection of a woman who'd just been given everything she'd never dared to want. That night, lying beside Eli in the bed, they now shared, Clara couldn't sleep. You're thinking too loud, Eli murmured, his arm tightening around her waist. I can hear it from here. Josie called me Ma. Silence. Then, how do you feel about that? Terrified, honored, like I'm going to ruin everything. Clara turned to face him. What if I'm terrible at this? What if I hurt them somehow? What if I'm too broken to be a mother? You're not broken. You're healing. Eli's hand found hers in the darkness. And those kids already love you. You've been mothering them since the day you arrived, cooking, cleaning, listening. You just didn't have the title. It's different now. Official. Is it, or is it just the same thing with a name attached? He propped himself up on one elbow. Clara, you saved my life in that storm. You stood up to Silas. You faced down a town full of people who called you a monster. You think being a mother is harder than any of that? Yes. Because with all those things, I only had myself to lose. With this... She swallowed. With this, I could lose them. You could. That's the risk of loving anyone. His voice softened. But the alternative is worse. The alternative is closing yourself off, living safe, never feeling anything at all. I tried that after Ruth died. It's not living. It's just waiting to die. Clara thought about the cellar. About the years of numbness, the walls she'd built around her heart just to survive. She'd already done the closed-off thing. It hadn't saved her from pain. It had just made the pain lonelier. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Good. Means you care." Eli kissed her forehead. "Now go to sleep. Tomorrow's a new day. First day of the rest of our lives and all that." "Is that one of your sayings?" "That's one of Ruth's." She could hear the smile in his voice. "She had a lot of them. You'll probably hear them all eventually." Clara settled against his chest. His heart beat steady beneath her ear. Tomorrow was a new day. First day of the rest of her life. The thought didn't terrify her anymore. The trial came 6 weeks later, just as the first hints of spring were beginning to soften the snow. Clara rode into Helena with Eli at her side. Josie and the boys left at the ranch with Mrs. Chen. The courthouse was imposing, all stone and columns and cold authority, but Clara walked through its doors with her head high. Silas looked worse than she'd ever seen him. Thinner, grayer, his eyes sunken and hollow. Prison had not been kind. When he saw her enter the courtroom, something flickered across his face. Fear, maybe, or recognition of how completely the tables had turned. "State your name for the record." "Clara Brennan." The new name felt right on her tongue. Solid. True. "Mrs. Brennan, can you tell the court what you witnessed on the night of March 15th, 1862? She told them. Every detail she remembered: Silas's slurred confession, Harriet's sharp reply, the years of silence that followed. She told them about the cellar, the darkness, the beatings. She told them about the auction platform and the man who'd bought her freedom. The defense attorney tried to rattle her, called her testimony unreliable, suggested she was mentally unstable, prone to delusions, seeking revenge against the man who'd raised her. Clara looked at him steadily. "The man who raised me locked me in a cellar for 14 years because I knew he was a murderer. If that's raising, I'd hate to see neglect." Nervous laughter rippled through the courtroom. The attorney backed off. When it was over, when the jury had deliberated for less than an hour and returned a verdict of guilty, Clara stood outside the courthouse and breathed. It was done, really done. Silas would hang. The judge had been clear about that. Murder, abuse, false imprisonment. The list of charges was long enough to warrant 3 executions if such things were possible. "How do you feel?" Eli asked. Clara thought about it. "Empty, but the good kind of empty, like something rotten has been cut out. That's healing." "Is it? I thought I'd feel more. Triumphant, maybe, or relieved, but I just feel free." The word fit. "Yeah, free." They rode home through the spring mud, past fields that were just starting to green, past trees beginning to bud. The world was waking up from winter, shaking off the cold, reaching toward the sun. Clara felt like she was waking up too. The months that followed were the happiest of her life. She learned the rhythms of the ranch calving season, in spring fence mending, in summer harvest preparations, in fall. She learned the rhythms of her family too. Josie's quiet strength, Tommy's boundless energy, Will's thoughtful silences. She learned what it meant to be a wife, to share a bed and a life with someone who knew her worst parts and loved her anyway, to argue and make up, to plan and dream and build something together. Summer brought long days and hard work. Clara's bread became famous throughout the territory. Mrs. Chen couldn't keep it in stock. She started taking orders, then taking on help, then teaching Josie the secrets of the perfect crust. "You should open a bakery," Eli said one evening, watching her knead dough by lamplight. "In town, people would never. People line up to buy your bread every week. They'd line up to buy it every day if they could." He came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Think about it. A place of your own. Something you built." Clara thought about it. A bakery. A business. something that belonged to her that she'd created with her own hands. The girl in the cellar had dreamed of nothing but survival. The woman she'd become could dream of so much more. "Maybe," she said. "Maybe I will." Fall arrived with color and chill. The mountains blazed red and gold, then faded to brown as winter approached. Clara stood on the porch one October morning, a shawl wrapped around her shoulders, watching the children head off to school. Josie had grown 3 inches over the summer. The twins had lost their baby faces, their features sharpening toward the young men they'd become. Time was moving, carrying them all forward, and for once Clara didn't want to hold it back. "Penny for your thoughts." Eli appeared beside her with coffee. "Just watching them grow, wondering how it happened so fast. That's parenthood. Blink and they're different people." He handed her a cup. "Speaking of different people, got something to show you." He led her to the barn to the far corner where a canvas covered something large. When he pulled it back, Clara gasped. A sign. Hand-carved, hand-painted with letters that spelled out Clara's Bakery. "Figured you'd need it," Eli said. "When you opened the place. You made this." "Had some help from the boys. They did the painting." He pointed to the corner where a small, slightly lopsided chicken had been added. "That's Tommy's contribution. Said every bakery needs a mascot." Clara laughed through sudden tears. "It's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. So you'll do it, open the bakery." She looked at the sign, at this gift from the man who'd given her everything, at this evidence of the life she'd built from nothing but courage and hope. "Yes," she said, "I'll do it." The bakery opened the following spring in a small building on Main Street that had once been a milliner's shop. Clara spent weeks scrubbing, painting, arranging, transforming the space into something warm and welcoming. On opening day, a line stretched down the block. "Told you," Eli said, manning the door while Clara worked the counter. "They love your bread." "They're curious about the scarred woman who married the giant rancher. That's different from loving bread. Give them time. They'll love both." He was right. Within a month, Clara's Bakery was the busiest spot in Stillwater Creek. People came for the bread and stayed for the warmth. Clara learned her customers' names, their preferences, their stories. She hired help, a young widow who needed work, a teenage boy who reminded her painfully of herself at that age. She built something that was hers. And on the first anniversary of her rescue from the auction platform, she stood behind the counter of her bakery and marveled at how far she'd come. "1 year," Josie said, appearing with a fresh tray of rolls. "Can you believe it?" "No. Sometimes I think I'm going to wake up and find out it was all a dream." "It's not a dream. It's just life." Josie set down the tray. "A really good life. The best life." Clara wiped her hands on her apron. "Did your father tell you we're closing early today?" "He mentioned something about a family dinner. Special occasion." "Very special." Clara smiled. "I have an announcement to make." That evening, gathered around the table that had witnessed so many meals and moments, Clara looked at her family. Her husband steady as always, watching her with love in his eyes. Her daughter, because that's what Josie was now in every way that mattered, beautiful and fierce, and growing into someone extraordinary. Her sons, still wild, still loud, still the light of her life. "I have news," Clara said. "I was going to wait, but—" She pressed her hand to her stomach. "It seems our family is going to grow." Silence. Then chaos. Tommy shot out of his chair. "A baby. We're having the baby." Will was calculating. "So we'll be big brothers, real big brothers." Josie's eyes had gone wide. "Clara, you're sure? Doctor confirmed it yesterday." Clara looked at Eli, who hadn't moved, hadn't spoken. "Say something." He stood slowly, crossed to her chair, and dropped to his knees in front of her. His hands covered hers on her stomach. "A baby," he said hoarsely. "Our baby. Our baby. Clara." He pressed his forehead against their joined hands. After Ruth, I thought I never thought I'd... I know. She freed one hand to stroke his hair. Neither did I. I love you. He looked up at her, his eyes bright. I love you so much. I love you too. She leaned down and kissed him. Now get off the floor before Tommy explodes. The celebration lasted until well past the children's bedtime. When the house finally quieted and Clara stood at the window of their bedroom, she felt Eli's arms wrap around her from behind. A baby, he murmured against her hair. Can you believe it? No, but then I couldn't believe any of this a year ago. She turned in his arms. I was a specter, Eli, a ghost, a thing people cross the street to avoid. And now I'm a wife, a mother, a business owner, a person. You were always a person. The world just couldn't see it. You saw it. I saw you. Just you. He kissed her softly. And I'll keep seeing you. Every day. For the rest of our lives. Promise? Promise. Clara looked past him out the window at the stars scattered across the Montana sky. The same stars that had watched over her in the cellar. The same stars that had witnessed her auction, her rescue, her transformation. She thought about the girl she'd been. Locked in darkness, convinced she was a monster. Believing she deserved nothing better than shadows and silence. That girl was gone now. In her place stood a woman scarred, yes, but whole. Wounded, but healed. A woman who'd learned that courage wasn't the absence of fear, but the decision to move forward anyway. Eli. Yeah. Thank you. For what? For looking inside the sack. For seeing me when no one else could. For giving me a reason to believe I was worth something. You were always worth something, Clara. You just needed someone to remind you. She leaned into him, letting his warmth surround her. Behind them the house creaked and settled the sounds of home, of family, of belonging. They called her the Specter once. The beast in the sack. The curse of Stillwater Creek. But she was none of those things anymore. She was Clara Brennan. Wife, mother, baker, survivor. She was a woman who'd walked through 14 years of darkness and emerged into the light. And she was finally, completely, irrevocably home. The story of the Specter became legend in Stillwater Creek. People told it for generations, how a giant cowboy bought a hooded girl from an auction platform, how she faced down her abuser and sent him to the gallows, how she built a bakery and a family and a life worth living. But the people who knew her best, her husband, her children, the grandchildren who would come later, they didn't think of her as the Specter. They thought of her as Clara, a woman who'd been broken and rebuilt herself, a woman who'd been told she was worthless and proved the world wrong. A woman who'd learned that love wasn't something you earned, but something you accepted freely, fully, without conditions or reservations. On her deathbed, 60 years after that frozen morning at the auction platform, Clara Brennan held her husband's hand and smiled. No regrets, she whispered. None? None. You gave me everything, Eli. A life, a family, a reason to believe I deserve to be happy. You gave me the same thing. His voice cracked. I was dead inside before you came along. You brought me back to life. Then we saved each other. Yeah. He pressed his forehead to hers, the same gesture that had comforted her for 6 decades. Yeah, we did. Clara closed her eyes. The darkness didn't frighten her anymore. It was just another door, another passage, another step on a journey that had begun the moment a giant cowboy looked at a hooded girl and saw something worth fighting for. They called her the Specter once. But she died with the sun on her face and love in her heart, surrounded by children and grandchildren, and the man who'd chosen her when no one else would. She died not as a ghost or a curse or a monster. She died as Clara Brennan, and that was more than enough. More